Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and today we're talking about my top 10 fantasy board games. Now, these are games that introduce you to really interesting, fun, fantastical worlds with magic and monsters and allow you to either explore them or use it as a theme to do something else. Now, with that being said, if you aren't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure that you are. It's the best way to help us grow. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the list. Now, first off, we do have two honorable mentions. Now, the first honorable mention is for Time Stories, A Prophecy of Dragons. So the time story system has you playing as time travelers. You're going back in time to try to fix some sort of mishap. Now, in this one in particular, you go to like an alternate universe, different area, but this one is fantasy themed. So this planet is like a fantasy land. So you have the standard characters that you may see in fantasy. Now, the time story system as a whole is not fantasy based, so it doesn't really belong on this list in my opinion, but this is my favorite module for time stories. And if you are a fan of the series, if you've played the first two, please get this one. It is incredible. This is one of the best gaming experiences I've ever had. So if you haven't, please give this one a try. Beautifully illustrated by Vincent Dutrait. This is a wonderful experience. Love this. That's Prophecy of Dragons, my honorable mention. Now, my second honorable mention is for the game Arena, the Contest, one that I really enjoy, the skirmish combat. You're going to have a team of 4 mages versus 4 other people, and you have all sorts of different classes to go from. Not necessarily mages, but they could be like pirates or barbarians, orcs, vampires, whatever. There's so many characters choose from. This is so much fun getting to use special abilities, but the reason that I haven't put on this list yet is because I really have not explored it as much as I'd really like to, but I did want to make sure that I put it here because I do think it's worth mentioning. And one quick thing is this has some of the best miniatures, might be my favorite miniatures in the business because they are pre-painted and they are incredible. They have a painted set of dragons here that are just out of this world amazing. The detailing is so good. They look amazing in pictures, in person. I still can't get over how amazing these miniatures are. So I'm enjoying this one, but I do need to play it more. I got to get my general thoughts through, play some more of the campaign, and get more of those battles done. So excited to try more Arena the Contest. But that being said, my number 10 is going to be for the game Lord of the Rings, the card game. Now, this is a Fantasy Flight living card game where they're going to be doing a cooperative scenario with little packs that are going to make these giant scenarios, and you could be taking your heroes, so 3 heroes, combining their attributes and using them to complete a mission of some sort. Now, my favorite part about this game is the combat, particularly the shadow cards. Whenever monsters attack, you deal a card from the top of the deck underneath them, and it could modify their attack somehow. So you could do some things to mitigate it. You could let them attack through and hope it's not something bad, but the different scenarios have different effects based on these shadow cards, and I think it's so interesting, so cool. It really changes up the gameplay and makes every card a potential threat. Really, really awesome. Now, this one should probably be higher on this list, but honestly, I find myself playing Arkham Horror, the card game, and Marvel Champions LCG a bit more, just because I got to get in those when they were still kind of younger in their lifespan, so there wasn't a lot more cards that I was unfamiliar with. Lord of the Rings, the LCG has been out for a very long time, so there's a whole bunch of content. So whenever I play this game, I usually look up a deck list and try something new, and the skill ceiling in this game is very high. This game is very difficult, so if you are not comfortable with that, I might not recommend this one, but the theme is so amazing. The gameplay is there. There's very much a lot of strategy in this, a lot of tactical choices based on the things that come out, and lots of planning and tough choices, but a fantastic experience. Great Lord of the Rings theming, and the Saga expansions are incredible. If I had been around when this game had initially been released, I probably would love this. It'd probably be in my top 10 games ever because it is that solid of a design, but I do think that it deserves a spot on this list because it really is a fantastic time. So that's my number 10, Lord of the Rings, the card game. My number 9 is going to go to the game Caverna, the Cave Farmers. This has you playing as a fantasy race of dwarfs, and you're going to be basically getting a bunch of goods and turning those goods into rooms or farms for your little village here. So you have 2 different spaces. You have your farm, which is going to have all your plants and animals, and then you have your cave, which is going to have your dwellings, as well as these special buildings that are going to be special abilities, as well as different mines, what have you. You have lots of cool choices here because when the game starts, all of the building tiles are just laid out, and so you can really pick and choose what you see fit. Now, my favorite part about this game are those dwelling tiles. I love how they do change things up, and they allow you to pursue different strategies, even with just a single one of those tiles may change your game completely. My favorite way to play this game is with the Forgotten Folk expansion, because not only are you dwarfs, but you're also all these other fantasy races, and they introduce new dwelling tiles and new building tiles, so you have lots more options for furnishing things. I think this is just such a solid system, and I also really like the adventure system. There are some spaces on the board where you can go on adventures and your dwarves can pick up weapons, and these weapons will allow you to bring back different values of goods. So the higher your weapon value, the better the loot that you can get is. And I think that's really fun and thematic. And in the book, they actually have an explanation of how these things came to be. So a wonderful, fantastic game. That is Caverna the Cave Farmers, my number 9. My number 8 is going to go to the game of Fantasy Realms, a game of hand management, hand building, where throughout the game you're going to be drawing cards to your hand and then playing them in a face-up discard pile. The game is over when there are 10 cards in the discard pile, and that's it. The expansion adds it so that your hand is a little bit larger, but overall the feeling is still the same. You're going to be picking cards based on their effects, their values, their suits, the way they combo. Now, my favorite part about this game are the cool combos that exist in here. For being such a small package, a lot of these cards have ways that you could do something like shooting the moon, where you're going for this really, really difficult combo, and you can figure out how to do it. And I think it's really, really fun when you're able to manage that. There's lots of different ways to do really insane combos, and the expansion adds a new type of card, the Outsider, that allows you to maybe substitute for specific cards or search the deck for cards or do some crazy things. So I really, really appreciate that mechanism, and it's just so much fun. I really like the card comboing in this game. I love how quick the gameplay is, and I love how straightforward it is. I think that this is a absolutely wonderful design and one that I find myself playing a lot. So I love Fantasy Realms, amazing hand building game. That is my number 8. My number 7 is going to go to the game Middara Unintentional Malum Act 1. So this is a giant sprawling JRPG in a board game where you're going to be taking these fantasy characters and going from mission to mission as you discover the secrets of the land. There's an overarching story that I'm not going to spoil here, but the big thing is you are these characters from the real world that have been thrown into this fantasy realm and are trying to find your place in it based on your own personalities and ideals as well as your families. So you have this really cool setup where you're taking these large tile boards. The game is quite easy to set up from game to game. Just slap the tiles on the board and then put the tokens on top. So I really like that. There's no puzzle pieces, no finagling. It's easy to find the things that you need, and they're all numbered, which is extremely helpful. So really easy to get through. Your characters have items that you'll be exhausting and tapping, and you'll be rolling gobs of dice and using symbols to activate the dice. Now, my favorite part about the game is that dice system. I love that when you're rolling, not only are the numbers important, but also the symbols. So based on the items you're using, you can get additional special abilities. I'm having a lot of fun with this one. I love the customization, and the artwork is super, super fun. I really think that this game is worth playing, worth giving a try, and it's one that I'm really enjoying. So that's my number 7, Middara Unintentional Malum Act 1. My number 6 is going to go to Gloomhaven, another large dungeon crawling style game that is entirely card driven, where you're going to be going from scenario to scenario using your hand of cards that is also your stamina and choosing which parts of those cards you want to use based on the scenario in front of you. So I really like this system, and I think it's just so well done. Now, unlike Middara, you're going to actually have to be puzzle piecing some things. The scenario setup is a little bit more tedious because you have monsters and you have lots of different decks for the monsters, but overall, I think that this experience is one that I prefer over Middara because of the card combat system. I think it just is so clean, it's so well thought, and it's my favorite part of the game. I think that it's so nice to be able to get comfortable with these cards, and I think after one play, after looking at those cards and getting to know them, you are so well ready to tackle any problem that faces you. You now know what this card does and understand the importance, and I love how that happens with each character that you get to play as. My other favorite thing about this game is the retirement system. You have a goal that you're working towards, and when you complete it, you get to unlock something, whether that be a new character or something special, so you'll get something really cool, and then you have a new thing that you can play as. Now, those characters, as I said before, you get to become comfortable with them as well, and so you get to try your hand and kind of start from zero, but you now have all this knowledge of the game, so it's even more rewarding. I love the system here. It gets you playing more, and I would prefer this one over Jaws of the Lion because of that retirement system. I love the idea of switching heroes. It keeps the game fresh, and it keeps you coming back for more. A fantastic game with a super satisfying card play. That's Gloomhaven, my number 6. My number 5 is going to go to the game Role Player, a game of dice drafting where you're going to be using the different dice values in order to build stats for your character. So each of these characters is going to have all of their different attributes, and it's your job to satisfy them to whatever their current class is. So if you're an assassin, you want to get high strength and you want high stealth, right? So you want to make sure that you are making your values appropriate in those areas. And then you also have specific colors you're going for based on your backstory card. You have an alignment area that you're trying to finagle. And then throughout the game, you'll be picking up these trait cards that give you additional ways to score. Now, my favorite way to play this game is with the monsters and minions and with the Fiends and Familiars expansion, so I just like playing with all of it. But the big thing is, when you play with the big monster, you're going to actually have something you're building this character towards. So it really makes a really nice arc for the game. Now, my favorite part of this game has to be the drafting itself. I think it's so straightforward and fun. You pick the dice, and then based on the value of the die, that determines your turn order in the market phase, which determines which items you can get, as well as the different monsters that you can fight. And I think that's really, really cool because you may prioritize a crappy die for a good choice in the market. And I think that's neat. Now, my other favorite thing about this are the trait cards. They generally will allow you additional ways to score points. And I think that's really fun, giving yourself these new restrictions. I love the idea of crafting your own win condition, and I think they're really important and they're really cool. It makes for a lot of interesting decisions over something you would normally go, and I really like that there's that variance based on a single card in a game like this. So really neat, and I love that you can even pick even more of them. So that's an amazing game, Role Player, my number 5. My number 4 is going to go to the game Heroes of Tenefyr, a dungeon crawling game that is through a deck building format. You're going to be taking a hero, building a deck of all these basic 0s and 1s, and then a special card, and then you're going to be going through dungeon after dungeon, and each dungeon has a stack of 4 enemies, and once you defeat the enemies, they're actually going to go into your deck as a card, so whoever does that killing blow. And this deck features a really awesome mechanism of deck building where you're going to be drawing 3 cards from the top of your deck, deciding if you want to keep those or discarding them to draw a new hand of 3. Do that as many times as you want, but once you run out of cards in your deck, you can no longer continue in the dungeon. And if you do that, you may not get the reward for the dungeon. So there's some big choices here as to, do you proceed or do you just make do with what you have? And I really, really like that choice. My favorite part about this game is that deck building portion, but my other favorite part has to be the cards themselves. I love the way that they are double-sided, so you can get an idea of saying, ooh, do we go after this tough monster because we really want that bottom half, or do we just stay away from that pile as a whole because that monster looks way too threatening? And also, whoever kills it gets the card, so you have some choice as to who is actually going to be putting in the final blow. There are some cards that let you switch things. This is just such a clever design, and it's one that I find myself coming back to a lot. This is one my wife and I really enjoy, and it's one that I really, really like. So I love this one. This is Heroes of Tenefyr, my number 4. My number 3 is going to go to the skirmish game Super Fantasy Brawl, a different take on fantasy as it's this giant gladiatorial arena. You have a 3v3 battle going on. You're trying to complete objectives by moving your giant creatures around this territory. Now, you'll put your heroes in front of you. You'll have all their cards are unique to them. You'll shuffle them up and then draw a hand of 5 every turn and play 3 different colored cards to do 3 different actions on the board. You also have these standard actions that you can do based on your cores, but the big thing is you're trying to satisfy these objectives over here. Now, these objectives all have different ways that you're going to want to position yourself, or some objective or task you do, and if you do them at specific times, they're worth more points. And it's simply a race to 5 points, 5 trophies. And you do that by either completing the objectives or taking out enemies. I really love how this game focuses on the objectives as well as the combat, because it's not just a game about moving and punching people, and I really, really appreciate that. It's also about that tactical and strategic movement based on the cards that you're getting. So I really, 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 really like this game. It is so well done. It's my favorite of these genres, and my favorite part about this game is the personality of the characters. Each character has their own set of 6 cards, and these cards very much feel like these characters. I love the way that if you're playing with the giant pirate, he's going to have these cards that allow him to shoot out his grappling hook and bring things to him. He's going to have a lot of pushing and pulling abilities. You have characters that are bloodlustful, and they're super excited when they're damaged and they get extra bonuses. You have characters that can hop around. You have ones that can throw people. That's my favorite card in this game, is you could just grab someone and throw them across the board. I love this. There's so many cool things that you can do, and it's just such a fun game that I just keep seeing myself come back to. I'm just so excited to play this every time. That is Super Fantasy Brawl, my number 3. Number 2 goes to Terra Mystica, a game of engine building as well as expansion on a fantasy map where you're going to be terraforming the land in order to live there. Now, my favorite part of this game has to be just the abilities, the powers, the asymmetric factions, and the way every game plays out. This game is just satisfying to a T. You're going to have this giant board that's in front of you that has all of these different endgame conditions, and these conditions you're going to know from turn 1. So you can make a plan right off the bat saying, okay, I need to make sure that I prioritize this so that this happens, and maybe this faction will be better for this. So you're going to be bidding for factions in order to get the edge up on these different things. And I think that's really cool how it's a player balanced system, even though these asymmetric factions are going to be better in certain maps. And then once you take your faction, that faction has this board where you'll be moving pieces from it onto the main board board as you expand. And whenever you take pieces off, it's going to unlock income icons. So every round, you're going to get a bunch of stuff. And it feels so good. And when you build these sanctuaries, you get even more choices on which of these icons you're taking. There's just a lot of choice here and a lot of clever mechanisms weaving together to create a fantastic system. Now, as I said, I have a lot of favorite parts in this one. This is just so satisfying to play. And I think some of my favorite factions have to do with just the way their boards are different. I really like the gnomes, the engineers. They're so fun. You have a board that is completely different than others. All the costs are different. Some of the places on the board are different. So your income icons are different. It's just so unique and so fun. I really like this game. I think they do a fantastic job with the asymmetry, how subtle or how direct it may be. And I think that it makes for a very interesting and enticing game, and one that I'm always excited to play. So Terra Mystica, incredible engine builder, a very solid Euro game. This is my number 2. Now, my number 1 is going to go to the game Too Many Bones, a game that I talk a lot about on this channel because it is just so good. It hits all those boxes: dice rolling, fantasy, adventure. It's all of these things and more. It is a game of RPG in a small, condensed experience. It's a one-shot game. You pick a nemesis, and you're going to go out and fight them with your character, leveling up along the way. Now, one thing that I have not mentioned a lot about here are the nemesis themselves, and I want to kind of highlight them here. The way it works is you pick a nemesis, and the nemesis has a game length, so you can decide how long you want to play this game. So cool. So many choices right there. Do I want to go for a long, couple hours? Do I want to be here just for a little bit and play with the character, get to know them? You have some choices here. And then based on the character you pick, it's also going to populate the different baddies that are going to show up in the game. For example, Duster here uses all of them, but if you pick like maybe Mulmesh, you're only going to get beasts. So you're going to pick and choose the creatures that you actually want to show up in your game. And then that character themselves has a special tyrant die that's going to give them special abilities when you do fight them. Now, on your way to fight them, they'll also have their own special encounters here. I won't spoil any of them here, but you'll shuffle them into the encounter deck, and throughout the game, there are special things that only happen in that mission. This is such a solid system, so modular. You pick the one you want to do, and it just sets up that game for you, and then you pick your gear lock, and you go for it. This game is just full of options and choices. My favorite part of this is still that tech tree puzzle that exists on the characters. I love how you're able to pick and choose your skills, but also not neglecting your personal stats. I love how some characters care about certain stats more. I love the different choices and trees, and how every time you play this game, you're going to be picking a different route. I still think Nugget is my favorite character here. I love all of her ways that she can manipulate loot and do things outside of battle. It's just such a blast. I love this game. That's my number 1, Too Many Bones. And that's the list. Those are my top 10 fantasy board games. Is there anything I missed on this list? I'd love to hear your opinions. And what are your top 10 fantasy board games? Please put them down in the comments below. So just in general, I think that this is a great genre of gaming. Who doesn't like being a powerful sorcerer or magician or swordsman? You have all of this cool stuff in order to save the day or do your best at it anyway. But I love this theme, and thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for watching. Side Game Strong, everybody.